Alright, so the one thing that has given me the hardest time in videography is color grading. I had the hardest time understanding all the color spaces and gammas and the way grading even works, histograms, all the other stuff that comes with it. For the longest time I wasn't able to get the results I wanted. There is one thing that I really overlooked when I started grading videos. I kind of just ignored it completely, and I think most people do. Also, what is it? What's that one thing that changed the way I grade videos completely? It's the most simple adjustment. Curves. You can usually find an adjustment called curves. It is basically a simple histogram and a diagonal line, and you have complete control over all the individual parts between highlights and midtones and shadows. Like, you can control any point of the histogram. It sounds very nice. It also introduces a lot of other problems. For example, if you're not careful enough, you can easily create gray and weirdly saturated areas in the video if you're stretching the curve too much. And that's basically why I ignored it altogether. The way I replaced curves was by using primaries in Davinci Resolve. It's the default thing that opens up when you're coloring videos in Davinci Resolve. However, over time I understood that I need more control over specific adjustments that I'm making. And that's why I started to use curves and almost completely scrapped using this primaries panel. This might be a very lengthy introduction to something so simple, so let's get into editing and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so I've opened up my Davinci Resolve project here, and we are already in the color management panel. And as you can see here, I have made many adjustments to this clip. They are all disabled right now, that's why the video is gray. But these are the various adjustments I've made to achieve the final result, which is curves, temperature, contrast, highlights, saturation, and so on. But the main thing we are focusing on right now is curves. But before that, I wanted to quickly go over one effect called Color Space Transform. So, I made that adjustment in a separate panel, and when I enable it, you can already see that a lot of color gets added back into the image, which basically saves me time and makes the curves adjustment a lot easier. Otherwise, I would have to manually maybe stretch the curve a little bit more to see the color popping back in, maybe add some saturation or do it in another panel here. So I'd have to manually add these things, but with this one effect, Color Space Transform, I just input my color space, input my gamma if I'm using any, and it already adds color back onto the footage, and all I have to do then is just make a simple curves adjustment like this one over here, and you can already see the picture coming together. It looks a lot more usable, it gives some character to it, and by adding other effects on top, you can see how I achieved the final look of this image. Yeah, so this is the next shot. It's actually a drone shot from my DJI Air 2 drone using the D-Cinelike Color Profile. That's why the colors are a bit more grayish than the normal profile, where they would be a little bit more saturated. But I'm actually adding them back with Color Space Transform. Usually I go by the S-curve, so you see like an S-curve forming, so you can see how much it impacts the whole footage, how much more dramatic it looks. By adding all the other colors, I actually didn't need to do much with this example. You can see how it came together and how much the curves have an impact on the final edit. Same thing here. Okay, so I've picked out a shot and I wanted to adjust curves on this specific shot and showcase how I would go about editing that. First of all, Resolve is working with the node system, which basically is the same as working with adjustment layers. And by adding more nodes, it's the same effect as just adding adjustment layers on top of one another. So I'm gonna make a new node, and first of all I'm gonna add the Color Space Transform because it just makes my life so much easier. And there you go. If I want to be extra safe, I can add Rec 709 as the output. And there we already gain a bit of color in this image. Then I'm gonna add a new node, and we're gonna focus on the curves. So I see that some changes are happening between the stages here because there's a big spike in the histogram. There's some changes happening here. Basically, the adjustments that I want to make to this specific shot is I would probably want to drag down the shadows together with the grass, make the grass a bit darker, and I would want the fog to pop out a bit more together with the sky. So that's what we're gonna do. So first off, I'm gonna add some contrast by dragging out the shadows like this. And what you want to do, like, try to make the curve smooth so there's not like sharp edges like this. Try to make it smooth so it's like a sort of like a wave. By making this curve smooth, this is basically gonna blend all the adjustments smoother. This specific adjustment, I can see that fog is affected by it, and I wanted the fog to pop a bit more, so I'm gonna drag that out a little bit. I'm gonna make this sort of like that. And I usually mute or drag down the end part of my highlights because I like a bit of grayish tone in my highlights. So with this, you can see the picture coming together very nicely. I'm just gonna edit this whole image. I'm gonna correct the temperature if I want to. I'd like this to be a little bit more warm. Then I'm gonna add some highlights, or actually reduce the highlights. By doing that, I wanted to reduce a bit more of the shadows. There. Then I'm gonna add some more color. I'm gonna do that by adding it here like this. I actually might go ahead and add a bit more than that. Maybe go and adjust some of the tones, some luminance. I would like the sunrise to be a bit more noticeable, so I'm gonna add a bit of saturation here. I'm gonna also add some saturation in the shadows. Add some color to the shadows, some more color to the highlights. And then one more thing, I see a lot of people using this effect recently, and I enjoy adding it myself. So I'm gonna add some glowing effect, which basically makes it seem like it's a bit more realistic. It reduces the sharpness of the video to the highlight parts. I enjoy the way it looks. I'll just go around, play with the settings a little bit, and there. So, and this is how I would go about coloring the whole clip. This is the before, this is the after, this is without the curves adjustment, and this is just the curves adjustment. So I kind of forgot to record the outro sequence. If you guys enjoyed this, click the buttons, it really helps, and I'll see you in the next video.